Here we are, another Wednesday. That means some more Rank the Movies. This week I am talking about my favorite trilogies. That is, series of films that only have 3 parts to them. I mentioned this in the last video. I'm going to gesture this way, so I'm not gesturing off camera. I mentioned it in the last video that I didn't count Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey into 2-part movies, two first, because while they already have trilogies, Afterlife and Face the Music respectively, unfortunately they also won't be part of this list because I haven't seen those movies. I can't comment on Ghostbusters Afterlife or Bill and Ted Face the Music. Haven't seen them, can't comment on them. But we're going to talk about my favorite trilogies I can talk about. So, let's start with something really good here. Blade 2, and Blade Trinity. There's a running gag in my friend circle that Blade Trinity is the best in the series. That is because it is such a bad movie. Basically, the Blade series follows Blade. It's based on a Marvel comic. Nobody knew it was based on a Marvel comic when it came out, but it is. Wesley Snipes plays Blade. He is a vampire hunter who has some skills of a vampire because his mother was bit while she was pregnant with him. So he has some vampiric abilities. In the first one, he fights Stephen Dorff. That's the actor who plays the villain. The villain's name, I don't have it right now, but it's played by Stephen Dorff. Dorff is just trying to get supremacy. In Blade 2, he fights a new version of vampire that's kind of a genetic offshoot of the normal vampires. And in Blade Trinity, he fights Dracula, which is, wow, he fights Dracula. Blade Trinity does have Ryan Reynolds and Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, which, are good assets, I guess, to the movie. But yeah, Blade and Blade 2 are really good films. Blade Trinity is fun to watch, to make fun of, and I highly suggest if you want to sit down and make fun of some Blade, watch Blade Trinity. But it's a good trilogy nonetheless. Alright, next up, we're talking Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and Army of Darkness. This is a weird one, and I admit it, because this does have a remake in Evil Dead. It was released a few years ago. Bruce Campbell makes a shadowed cameo as Ash in that one, so it's hard to know if that's canon or not. Plus, it does have a TV show. But since the TV show isn't a movie, this is a trilogy of movies that just happen to have a TV show also. Basically, in the Evil Dead, a group of college students go to a cabin for the weekend where they find an ancient book and a tape recorder. They foolishly hit play on the tape recorder and release a bunch of demons from the woods that are around them, and they begin to possess the various students until Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, the amazing Bruce Campbell, fights them off and has to kill them all, including his girlfriend and his sister, who was possessed by being raped by a tree. That appears to be a running thing in horror movies, is that possession is a sexually transmitted disease. More on that in the weeks to come. Evil Dead 2 picks up where the first movie left off, but also retcons the entire first movie by retelling it in the first half hour. So it retells the first movie, deleting every character from the first one except Ash and his girlfriend. And then it continues on. Ash ends up being possessed for a moment. He fights it off. His hand becomes possessed, so he chops it off, which is where he gets the chainsaw hand. And there's some other people who show up at the cabin, and he ends up getting sucked into limbo, where we are taken to Army of Darkness, where he is sent back in time to medieval times, and he has to fight off the army of the dead there, while trying to save the girl, find his way home. Depending on which ending you have, either he successfully finds his way home and returns to his own timeline, or he ends up waking up in the far future. It depends. There are 2 different endings to this movie. The canon ending actually is the one where he finds his way home, because that would take you to Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is the TV show that ran on Starz for 3 seasons, where Ash continues his war against the Necronomicon and the Army of Darkness years after the events of these 3 films. All 3 movies are great movies. They're fun. They're fun little popcorn films. They're enjoyable to watch. The show is really good, and I highly suggest if you've never sat down with these movies, do it. It's worth your time. Alright, next up we are talking about The Expendables, The Expendables 2, and The Expendables 3. I hated The Expendables the first time I watched it. I'm perfectly honest here. I did not like The Expendables the first time I sat down with that movie. I thought it was boring, I thought it was long, and I didn't care for anyone's acting in it. On that note, I decided with one of my friends back when The Expendables 2 came out to go see it in theaters. We had nothing better to do that day. So we went and saw The Expendables 2 to make fun of it. I really liked that movie. I really enjoyed The Expendables 2. The Expendables 2 is a great movie. It makes me appreciate The Expendables a little more, but I still really don't like The Expendables. I have a copy of it in my collection that's on the shelves behind me. Well, most of it's on the shelves behind me. But it's mainly just for the series. Expendables 3 isn't bad. It's not as good as Expendables 2. Expendables 2 is definitely the highlight of this series. But Expendables 3 is still a pretty good movie. Mel Gibson is the antagonist, and he does a pretty good job with it. Honestly, if you want to see some good action movies and a lot of great action stars, watch this trilogy. I'm not saying it's the best trilogy you'll ever watch, but it's not bad. It's enjoyable. Next up, we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I almost added its tagline as its underscore title, but it is not. Hey dude, this is not a cartoon. I'm just reading the taglines for fun. Back by bodacious demand, and the turtles are back in time. I don't like the third one. I get into a regular argument with two of my friends over is Turtles 2 or Turtles 3 the better movie. I say it's Turtles 2. They say it's Turtles 3 because it annoys me. But I don't care for Turtles 3. I think it's got a lot of problems. I think it's a bad movie. I like Turtles 2. It's a little more childish than the first movie. The first movie is this really dark, kind of adult-themed movie based more on the graphic novels, and more on the comics and less on the cartoon show. And it's a great movie. The first Turtles movie is great. Turtles in Time is... Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, is another really good film, although the tone really changes and it gets more cartoony. And then they just gave up and made Turtles 3. And then they rebooted the series with the animated movie and then the new live-action movies. But the first two are good to watch. Watch the first two. Alright, next we're going to talk about Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay, and A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas. Again, a lot of these I like two movies out of this trilogy, and one movie I don't really care for. This is another example of that. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle is an amazingly funny movie. It's got a lot of great humor in it, and honestly, the first time I watched it, I laughed my butt off, and I watched it off of Comedy Central. So it was very edited, very toned down. I still thought it was hilarious, and then I watched the actual movie, and it was still funny as crap. Escape from Guantanamo Bay is a giant smoldering piece of crap that just kind of sits there on the screen for 2 hours. It doesn't add anything. There's no really great jokes in it. There's no great characters. It just is kind of there. The movie then completely redeems itself in this series because A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas is a Christmas regular for my viewing pleasure when it is the season of Saint Nick and all that crap. Because this one it has a lot of great humor. It was filmed in 3D, but you don't need 3D to enjoy the movie. It is such a good time. It is such a funny movie. I suggest the first movie and the third movie of this trilogy kind of ignore, this one, Escape from Guantanamo Bay. But definitely check out Harold and Kumar Christmas and Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Those are movies worth watching. Next up, we're going to talk about Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. I can never remember what the actual group name of this trilogy is called. It's the East Rail, and that's where it loses me. Is the numbers of what it is. Basically, you have Unbreakable, which is these are all M. Night Shyamalan films. Unbreakable is Bruce Willis finds out he's never gotten sick, he's never gotten injured, he's never broken a bone. He is unbreakable. Samuel L. Jackson plays a comic book enthusiast who suffers from a disease where his bones are very brittle and they break very easily. And it's kind of that origin story of the man figuring out he's a superhero and meeting his supervillain. Split is about, I've talked about Split and Glass at length on this channel. Split is the man who has multiple personalities, Kevin. He has many personalities inside of him, and some of them are evil and they're trying to summon the beast to sacrifice some girls to, and Glass is where these two movies come together and they kind of face off in a mental institution. I'm not a fan of Unbreakable. I've watched it a couple of times now, especially because I like the last two, the second and third movies so much. I still don't care for Unbreakable. It just doesn't do anything for me. But Split and Glass are very well made movies. Watch all three of them just so you understand the full story. But definitely Split and Glass are the ones to really check out. Next up, we have The Mummy, The Mummy Returns, and The Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. This is the Universal remake of the Mummy film. If you watched me talk about the original Universal horror films, I liked The Mummy. I really liked The Mummy, and I liked this too. I saw this long before I saw that version. Basically, you have Imhotep is still the villain of these movies, and he's raised in a tomb in Egypt, and he's trying to basically take over the world. And that's kind of, the second one is he's trying to do it through the Scorpion King, and the third one sucks, and I haven't watched it in a very long time, so I really can't say anything on it, other than it's bad, don't watch it. But definitely watch The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. They're fun films, they're good action movies, and they're well worth the time. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is garbage, and I suggest never watching that movie. Next up, we're going to talk about Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and Austin Powers in Goldmember. This is the Austin Powers trilogy. These are great, funny films. You have Mike Meyer, who plays multiple characters in each movie. In the first one, he plays Austin Powers and Dr. Evil. He then adds Fat Bastard in the second one. And in the third one, he plays the title character of Goldmember. They're basically takes on the James Bond spy film genre and the movie In Like Flint. They are great and fun films. They're hilarious, and definitely they're ones you want to sit down with. This is a great trilogy. All three movies are really good in this set, and I suggest watching all of them. Definitely check them all out. They're worth it. Alright, next up, we have the Dark Knight trilogy, which is Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. This is Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. So you have, Batman Begins is kind of the origin story, The Dark Knight is the great movie with the Joker, and The Dark Knight Rises is the one with Bane. That's all right. It's not great. This one is, I think the first two movies do a much better job of telling a story than the last one, but that's me personally. This is the story of Batman. There's not a lot I need to go into here. It's a Batman story. They're good movies, definitely check them out. Alright, and next up is my number 2 favorite trilogy, the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy. These ones just kind of numerically go up. So you have Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3. This is the story of Axel Foley. In the first one, his best friend is killed. Well, he gets knocked out and his best friend gets killed. And he goes to Beverly Hills to investigate the murder. In there, he meets some cops, and he ends up taking down the murderer. Beverly Hills Cops 2, Axel Foley returns to Beverly Hills to look into the attempted murder of Detective Bogomil, who is one of the cops he befriended in the first movie, and Beverly Hills Cop 3, as he goes and he looks for his captain in Detroit, his killer. He goes looking for his captain's killer, who happens to work in a theme park in Beverly Hills. It's a great trilogy. Eddie Murphy and Judge Reinhold are in all three, and they do such good jobs in all of them. If you've never sat down with it, take a look at them. They're not great films. They're not bad films. I know Beverly Hills Cop and Beverly Hills Cop 2 made my Eddie Murphy list. 3 didn't make that list, but I still like the movie. It is a fun movie. This is a great trilogy. I know they've always talked about the 4th movie in the series making Beverly Hills Cop 4, but they never have. So it stands just being this fun little group of films. And my favorite trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. It's a great trilogy. I love the Back to the Future movies. It's just a continuation of something really good, and it just moves forward. Obviously, it's the tale of Marty McFly, who goes back in time through a DeLorean and screws up his parents' meeting. The second one, he has to go save his kid, which leads to them screwing up the timeline because a guy gets a hold of a sports almanac. And the third one is them going to the Wild West to save Doc Brown, and again, messing with time. It's a great trilogy of films. They're very fun. They keep moving, and you just can't deny what these movies can do. This is the best trilogy I've ever seen. I don't care if they ever make another one. I don't care if they ever remake these movies. This is a solid trilogy. And when you sit down to watch Back to the Future, you almost feel like you have to watch Back to the Future Part 2, and then you have to watch Back to the Future Part 3. That is the hallmark of a great trilogy, is you want to keep watching straight through to each part. Alright, so those are my favorite trilogies. Maybe you have a trilogy I missed. Again, I specified a trilogy as just being 3 films of a series, nothing more. So like a lot of people say Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, 3, The Search for Spock, and 4, The Voyage Home. That's a trilogy, but you also have the motion picture, you have The Undiscovered Country, you have you have them all there. So it's a trilogy inside of a series, and that doesn't count. It has to just be a trilogy. That's all I was looking at. Hit subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. Like this video. Leave a comment if you have one. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Next week, we are talking wrestling. That's right, we're going to talk about some movies featuring pro wrestlers. It should be a good time. So join us. See you next time.